As Richard arrived at Lindsay's cottage, she couldn't shake off a peculiar feeling that something was amiss. His arrival was punctuated by an eerie silence that seemed to echo through the air. Despite the unease, Lindsay greeted him with a forced smile. "Welcome to the cottage, Richard. I hope you enjoy your stay," Lindsay said, trying to hide her discomfort. Richard nodded, his eyes glinting strangely in the dim light. As he settled in, Lindsay noticed a strange intensity about him. He rarely spoke, only offering curt responses to Lindsay's attempts at small talk. Days passed, and Lindsay couldn't shake off the sense of foreboding that hung in the air. She started finding unsettling signs, strange sounds at night, items misplaced, and an unsettling feeling that she was being watched. Lindsay's unease grew, but she dismissed it as paranoia, attributing it to the unfamiliarity of having a stranger in her home. One night, as Lindsay prepared to retire, she heard a whisper outside her bedroom door. "Lindsay," the voice hissed, sending shivers down her spine. She cautiously opened the door, only to find the hallway cloaked in darkness. Fear gnawed at her, but she convinced herself it was just her imagination playing tricks. The next morning, Lindsay woke up to find a chilling message scrawled on the bathroom mirror. "I'm always watching." Panic set in as she realized something was horribly wrong. She confronted Richard, demanding an explanation. "Did you write this? What's going on?" Lindsay's voice trembled. Richard's eyes, now void of any pretense, locked onto Lindsay. "You should have been more careful, Lindsay. You invited me in. And now there's no turning back." Lindsay's heart pounded in her chest as she raced to the front door, desperate to escape the nightmare unfolding within her own home. But the door wouldn't budge. It was as if it had been sealed shut. Panicking, she dialed the police, her trembling fingers struggling with the buttons. Richard's voice echoed through the cottage. "You can't escape, Lindsay. I know every inch of this place, and I know you." As the police raced to the scene, Lindsay felt a sinister presence closing in. Shadows seemed to dance malevolently around her, and the air became thick with a palpable malevolence. The realization struck her like a thunderbolt. Richard wasn't an ordinary guest. He was a predator who had meticulously orchestrated this nightmare. As the police burst through the door, they found Lindsay cowering in the corner, her eyes wide with terror. But Richard was gone, leaving behind only the haunting echo of his words. Lindsay's cottage was now a crime scene, tape fluttering in the breeze as investigators combed through the unsettling remnants of Richard's stay. The town buzzed with rumors about the incident, and Lindsay found herself grappling with a paralyzing fear that lingered long after the ordeal. Detective Anderson, a seasoned investigator with a steely resolve, approached Lindsay with a mix of empathy and determination. "We're doing everything we can to find him," he assured her, but Lindsay couldn't shake off the feeling that Richard was still watching, lurking in the shadows. Days turned into weeks, and Lindsay's life became a web of paranoia. Sleep was elusive, as every creak of the floorboards or rustle of the wind outside her window sent her heart racing. The town, once a haven, now felt like a prison. One evening, as Lindsay wandered through the aisles of a local grocery store, she spotted a familiar face among the shoppers. Her breath caught in her throat. It was Richard. Panic surged through her veins as their eyes locked for a brief, chilling moment. Without a second thought, Lindsay sprinted towards the exit, her mind a whirlwind of terror. Detective Anderson, alerted by Lindsay's distressed call, arrived swiftly. "Where did you see him?" he demanded, urgency etched across his face. "He was there, in the store. I saw him," Lindsay stammered, her voice quivering. The town plunged into a state of heightened alert, with police swarming the area in pursuit of the elusive predator. Lindsay, gripped by a relentless fear, found herself questioning every face she passed on the street. Weeks turned into months, and Lindsay's life became a harrowing journey of evasion. The once vibrant young woman was now a shell of her former self, haunted by the ever-present specter of Richard. Detective Anderson, despite tireless efforts, couldn't locate the elusive man, and the town was held captive by the fear of the unknown. One fateful night, as Lindsay locked herself inside her home, a chilling realization struck her. Richard wasn't just a man. He was a malevolent force that had woven itself into the fabric of her existence. The whispers, the shadows, the unshakable feeling of being watched. They were all manifestations of a sinister presence that refused to be banished. In a desperate attempt to reclaim her life, Lindsay decided to confront the darkness head-on. Armed with newfound determination, she ventured into the heart of the town, guided by an unsettling intuition that led her to the abandoned outskirts. The air hung heavy with tension as Lindsay approached an old, dilapidated building. Cautiously, she pushed open the creaking door, revealing a dimly lit room. There, amidst the shadows, stood Richard, a sinister grin playing on his lips. "You can't escape, Lindsay," he sneered, his voice echoing through the desolate space. But Lindsay, fueled by a mix of fear and fury, refused to be a pawn in his twisted game. As the final confrontation unfolded, Detective Anderson and the police arrived, surrounding the malevolent presence that had terrorized the town. The room echoed with the clatter of footsteps and the authoritative commands of law enforcement. In the ensuing chaos, Richard attempted a desperate escape, but justice prevailed as he was apprehended, his reign of terror finally coming to an end. As the dawn broke over the town, Lindsay stood amidst the debris of the confrontation, her eyes reflecting a mixture of relief and haunting memories. The nightmare was over, but the scars ran deep, etched into the very soul of the once tranquil town. Logan had always been a fan of solo vacations. He loved the idea of escaping the hustle and bustle of everyday life, finding solace in the tranquility of unfamiliar surroundings. One day, while browsing through Airbnb listings, he stumbled upon a charming cottage nestled deep in the woods. The pictures showcased a serene retreat, a perfect getaway from the stresses of city life. The description boasted of lush greenery, a crystal-clear lake, and an atmosphere that promised complete rejuvenation. Excited by the prospect, Logan quickly booked the cottage for a weekend retreat. As Logan drove deeper into the forest, the GPS signal weakened, and the narrow, winding road seemed to stretch endlessly. The thick canopy of trees overhead blocked the sunlight, casting eerie shadows on the path. Logan began to question the wisdom of his choice, but the anticipation of a relaxing weekend kept him going. Finally, he reached the cottage. It looked exactly as it did in the pictures, quaint and inviting. The air was thick with the scent of pine, and the only sounds were the rustling leaves and distant calls of unseen creatures. Logan couldn't help but feel a slight unease, but he brushed it off as the result of his overactive imagination. As night fell, the atmosphere changed. The once soothing rustling of leaves became haunting whispers, and the shadows took on a life of their own. Logan decided to call it an early night, hoping that a good night's sleep would dispel the strange feelings creeping over him. In the middle of the night, Logan was jolted awake by a creaking sound. The cottage seemed to be alive with unseen movements. He reached for the bedside lamp, but the room remained in darkness. Panicking, Logan stumbled out of bed and fumbled for his phone, using its weak glow to navigate through the unsettling blackness. He heard a soft whisper, barely audible. "Leave." Logan froze, his heart pounding in his chest. "Who's there?" he stammered, his voice echoing through the stillness. No response. The air hung heavy with tension. He felt a cold breeze sweep through the room, extinguishing the feeble glow of his phone. Logan's breath caught in his throat as he strained his eyes to see in the impenetrable darkness. Suddenly, the lights flickered back on. The room appeared as innocent as before, but the air felt charged with an ominous energy. Logan dismissed the incident as a vivid nightmare induced by stress and lack of sleep. Determined to salvage his weekend, Logan decided to explore the surroundings in the morning. The daylight brought a false sense of security, and he ventured into the woods, hoping to shake off the lingering unease. Yet, with every step, The atmosphere grew more oppressive. In the distance, Logan noticed an abandoned cabin. Its weathered exterior hinted at years of neglect, but curiosity got the better of him. As he approached, he heard faint whispers carried by the wind. The door creaked open, revealing a scene that sent shivers down his spine. The walls were adorned with unsettling drawings, distorted faces, twisted figures, and cryptic symbols. In the center of the room, a tattered journal lay open. Logan hesitated, but curiosity prevailed, and he began to read the horrifying accounts of past visitors who had encountered malevolent entities in the woods. Suddenly, a voice echoed through the cabin, chilling him to the core. "You should have left when you had the chance." Logan sprinted out of the cabin, his heart pounding. The once serene woods now felt like a labyrinth closing in on him. He stumbled back to his cottage, desperately trying to make sense of the unearthly events. As night fell again, the whispers returned, more menacing than ever. Logan barricaded himself in his room, fearing the unknown forces that seemed to surround him. The walls seemed to close in, the air thick with an otherworldly presence. In the dark hours of the night, Logan heard footsteps approaching. The door creaked open slowly, revealing a silhouette against the moonlit backdrop. "Leave," the voice whispered, sending chills down his spine. Logan, paralyzed with fear, managed to utter, "Who are you?" A cold chuckle filled the room. "I am the guardian of these woods, and you have trespassed into a realm beyond your understanding." The room plunged into darkness again. When the lights flickered back on, Logan found himself in a different place, an underground chamber adorned with macabre symbols. The air was heavy with the stench of decay. In the dim light, Logan saw a figure in the shadows. It was a man with a twisted grin and wild eyes. "Welcome to my realm," he hissed. Logan, trapped and helpless, watched in horror as the man approached, revealing a collection of eerie masks hanging on the wall. "You will become part of the woods, just like the others," the man declared, donning a grotesque mask. As the maniacal laughter echoed through the chamber, Logan's fate was sealed. The last thing he heard was the voice whispering, "You should have left." The cottage stood silent in the woods, a facade of tranquility concealing the horrors within. The whispers lingered, warning any future visitors that the woods held secrets that should remain undisturbed. Oliver's excitement, however, was short-lived as I noticed an unsettling portrait hanging in the dimly lit living room. The eyes of the painted figure seemed to follow me, giving me an uneasy feeling. Despite the discomfort, I brushed it off as a mere trick of the light and decided to settle in for the weekend. As the night descended and the forest outside embraced complete darkness, I found myself tossing and turning in the creaky bed. Strange noises echoed through the cottage, whispering secrets that sent shivers down my spine. I dismissed them as the creaks and groans of an old house settling, desperately trying to convince myself that everything was normal. The next morning, I ventured into the nearby town, hoping to shake off the lingering unease. In the local cafe, I struck up a conversation with the barista, who seemed hesitant to discuss the cottage. After persistent prodding, the barista finally whispered, "That place has a dark history. People have gone missing." Chills ran down my spine as the barista revealed that the cottage was once owned by a notorious serial killer who preyed on unsuspecting errand guests. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. I was in the lair of a murderer. Panic set in, and I rushed back to the cottage, my mind racing with fear. As night fell once again, I heard footsteps outside my door. Paralyzed with terror, I listened as the doorknob rattled, the intruder attempting to gain entry. "Hello, Oliver," a chilling voice whispered from the other side. I stumbled backward, my heart pounding in my chest. It was then that I noticed a hidden trapdoor in the corner of the room. With nowhere else to turn, I lifted it and descended into a dark, damp cellar. The footsteps grew louder above me, and I cowered in the shadows, praying that I had escaped the clutches of the serial killer. In the dim light, I discovered a series of old newspaper clippings revealing the gruesome details of the killer's past victims. I was not the first, and I feared I wouldn't be the last. The cellar seemed like a tomb, a place where the killer had hidden the evidence of his heinous crimes. As I cowered in the darkness, I heard the door to the cottage burst open, the killer's footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. I held my breath, praying that he wouldn't find my hiding place. Time stretched into an agonizing eternity as I listened to the sinister whispers of the intruder searching for his next victim. Suddenly, the cellar door swung open, and I met the cold, menacing gaze of the serial killer. "You can't hide forever, Oliver," he hissed, the twisted pleasure evident in his voice. Terrified, I scrambled to my feet, determined to escape the clutches of this deranged predator. The chase through the woods was a blur, a heart-pounding race for survival. As dawn broke, I stumbled into the welcoming lights of the town, gasping for breath and grateful to have eluded the clutches of the errant killer. The dark history of that cottage would forever haunt my nightmares, a chilling reminder of the dangers that lurked beneath the seemingly idyllic facade of an urban getaway.